And for the first Sunday of the new year, you've found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda to start off the year, there's a chance gas taxes could be raised and significantly. That streetcar in downtown Atlanta is rolling, but are people rolling with it? And it's possible the city will have a bond issue for infrastructure this spring. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad that you are with us on the first Sunday of the new year, 2015. Happy New Year. If you haven't had enough football, I don't know what I can say to you, because I think even I have had too much football. But there is news this week because a joint committee of the State Senate and the State House issued a report. They've been studying for more than a year about ways to take care of Georgia's transportation infrastructure. And the report kind of goes against form and type. In other words, you have Republicans in the leadership looking hard at raising the gas tax and other taxes, perhaps even a state sales tax. And Phil, traditionally conservatives and Republicans believe in three words: no new taxes. This one's being called a user fee. What do you think? What do you think is the outcome?
Well, and this committee never gave any specific recommendations.
Well, they did and then took them out.
That's right. That's right. So it gives the legislature flexibility. But as a conservative, I think that the one thing, if you're going to raise, say, the gas tax, you need to have some offsetting cuts. So I don't know what's going to happen with the legislature, but so many of these legislators, as we know, Republican legislators, have taken a no new tax pledge, and we can talk about that a little later. I also think they ought to separate out the SHEP, the Savannah Harbor Expansion Project. That was included in this, and it's a very important project. I think there's total bipartisan support for that, but they need to get that as a separate budget item and not put it in this whole grouping.
And Jeff, the amounts being talked about are $1.5 billion per year to take care of ongoing maintenance. Then you add another $1 to $2 billion to build the toys you want to build. And obviously current revenue isn't going to handle that. And I think the other important thing in the report was that it was unequivocal about supporting transit systems around the state. Not just MARTA, but transit systems around the state.
You know, it comes down to two things: revenue and courage. And we need the revenue, and in order to get it, we're going to need the courage. And I think that this committee has demonstrated that it has the courage to put some options on the table. It's really up to the General Assembly and the governor at this point to push forward and tell Grover Norquist and all of those Republican nuts to go away, that we've got business to take care of in the state of Georgia, and we're going to do it, Phil. We need the money. And there's only one way to get the money, and that is from the people who use it. Now, we've talked about the ways of going about it ad nauseum, you know, whether it's committing that fourth penny, or whether it's raising the gas tax, or in putting in place some sort of a user fee. But we've got to come up with the revenue. It's just that
simple. Are you for offsetting cuts if we raise taxes?
Where would you offset cuts
income
for
tax.
Transportation?
The report,
it would be the income tax.
The report said cut the income tax.
What that does is that puts the onus on the lower income, poor people of the state, the consumers. If they cut the state income tax, then the people who have money will benefit, but they will also switch it to a consumer tax, which is raising, you know, a state sales tax, which puts the pressure on people who have lower incomes.
Well,
I don't think that's right to do it that way.
And, you know, the problem here, the facts are pretty clear. Georgia is way too reliant on federal subsidies, federal highway grants and the like, and those are going away. I mean, Obama will give you a streetcar, but he's not going to help you with major bridge and overpass repair. All this shovel-ready stuff, none of that ever happened. So it's up to the state to deal with it, and the state has way too high reliance on federal taxes and also spends far less than the states around us
Absolutely.
on infrastructure. It's really,
Absolutely.
it's,
That's right. Now,
we've done badly in long-term management.
We have. The
We have,
infrastructure
and that's
can
why
be
we're
addressed.
where we are.
Jeff, I know you like, and I think Alexis, you appreciate the public-private partnerships.
Absolutely.
We got started
Yeah.
late. We didn't do much under the Purdue administration, as we all know. That was a terrible weak spot. But if we can get more public-private investments for our roads and infrastructure and bridges, that's going to help us. And also, I think there was a great article that was overlooked in the AJC a few weeks back, and I'm going to keep harping on this. The State Department of Transportation owns just acres and acres of land. If they sold off a lot of these large swaths of acreage, they could just generate hundreds of millions of dollars just with that. So there's other ways, Jeff. We don't always have to think about gouging the taxpayers.
It's not about gouging the taxpayers. It's about investing in our state's future so that we can be competitive with states around us, Phil. That's what we need to be able to do. We've never invested a dime in transit. Now, for the first time, we've got Republicans in the General Assembly talking about transit. We need to make these investments if we want to stay competitive. We say that we want to bring jobs here, that we want to bring businesses here. They're not coming if we're going to be stuck in traffic and we haven't updated our transportation system.
All right. I also think that is, as Jeff just said, one of the strong points about this report is that it does show and suggest that there be a state commitment to public transit, including, which has never been there before. You know, there's never been a real state commitment to MARTA. If anything, it's been, you know, putting handcuffs on MARTA about how they use the money that they have.
And I think what the report's saying too, Alexis, is that it's not just MARTA.
Right. It's all
That
metro
there are
area.
all these cities in the state that are going to need something. I can't speak for Augusta. Phil, you might be able to, but
Right.
but we're going to need something like, just pick one out
No.
of the air here. Let me pick one out of the air. A statewide bus rapid transit network, or perhaps we revisit rail in the old abandoned railroad corridors. You know, the old line from Atlanta to Macon. I was lukewarm about that because of the cost, and I didn't think there'd be much return. But maybe you have to look at it.
Bus rapid transit seems to be the best option if we're going to be looking as a fiscally conservative alternative. I also think, obviously, politics gets involved. The governor's race in 4 years gets involved. Casey Cagle, our lieutenant governor, said, Jeff, as you know, we need to look at some transit. I don't think a lot of Republicans or Democrats are opposed to looking at some specifics on, say, the buses or transit. I just think you've got Mayor Reed now jumping into the mix, Atlanta's mayor, saying, well, I think there ought to be a kind of a 55-45 split with Atlanta getting transit. Now, that's I don't know how that's going to work into this mix.
He hurt the effort with that comment. But I think another question, Phil, is the commitment of Governor Deal. This hasn't been one of his highest priorities any more than it was Sonny Perdue's highest priority. And so I don't know whether Governor Deal gets out front on this, or does he work on his own priorities, education, ethics reform, and the like. What do you think?
Well, I think he will make infrastructure part of his priorities. He did question that $1 billion figure, so I don't know where he's going with that. I know he has his own ideas on transportation and infrastructure. You're right, though. Education and changing that antiquated formula, we've talked about it on the show for years. The QB, the Quality Basic Education formula, there is disparities with school systems. He will tackle that. And also, you're going to see tweaking of the ethics laws, and you're going to see the governor put forward his proposal. Remember, he has called for revamping the Ethics Commission. He wants 5 members from the legislative branch, 5 from the executive, 5 from the judiciary, and he wants them to clear up that backlog.
I also think, too, that the governor and the mayor, Kasim Reed, have been partners with the Savannah effort. And I think that, you know, given their bipartisan efforts, that if the mayor leans over and whispers to the governor, I need some help on this mass transit issue,
Yeah,
that
but
he'll
don't
get
say
it.
55-45. I think that was
Well,
a
that's-
mistake.
well-
I mean, we know Atlanta's place in the larger state and the amount of revenue and all that, but just don't say it that
It's just,
way.
you know, what we need to do is just kick the pledge. And the pledge is no new tax pledge, the Grover Norquist pledge. We've got
but
to
you
move
can get
away from it
Democrat
because
votes.
it's not leadership, guys. It's capitulation.
Well-
it's kicking the can
But
down the road
Democratic
to
votes-
future generations, and we cannot do that.
Well-
Democratic votes can make the difference on this if it's done right.
Well, and also, Governor Deal has shown, and the legislature has shown in previous years, that they do raise fees, which is the same thing. They just don't call them taxes.
All right, we have to get out. When we come back, we'll look ahead. It's hard to believe the General Assembly returns to town in just a little more than a week. Wow, that went quickly. All right, we'll do that when we return.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
As we mentioned, the General Assembly comes back to town in a week. The governor and all the other statewide constitutional officers are sworn in the week to come, or I guess 8 days from when we tape this. But it's interesting. Medical marijuana is the one issue everyone's talking about. It looks like it's greased. In fact, I noticed the clinical trials have begun at Georgia Regents University on that. So that seems likely to pass. I'm going to be watching, just for myself, two measures by State Representative Harry Geisinger of Roswell. One is to just put a straw in the Tennessee River in North Georgia.
Get you some water.
And resolve our water problems overnight. It's common sense. It'll stand up in court. And then the other is whether we will.
You make it seem so simple.
Whether we will. Yeah, I do. I'm trying to make it simple.
I wonder if it'll stand up in court. We hope it will.
Well, there's Supreme Court precedent.
Well, and there's also continuing litigation on that border dispute that's been going on forever.
Right. And then Geisinger also has a measure to put horse racing on the ballot.
Yeah.
Local option parimutual betting.
Parimutual wagering. Yes. Anybody can go race a horse, but betting on it is a different matter. What else is likely to become an issue?
Well, I don't think the governor is ready for that. But just a point on the medical marijuana. It's a very controlled bill by Representative Alan Peake. As you remember, it almost passed last year. I had to laugh. The liberal lawmaker, Democrat Kurt Thompson, wants to legalize marijuana. He's trying to dovetail with all of this. I don't think that's going to get anywhere.
It won't, but it's a good idea, and it certainly would generate some more revenue because it would be taxed, it would create new business, new industry. It would be something to look at, I think.
Zombies walking around the streets and driving on our roads, that doesn't strike me as a real good idea.
You mean like alcoholics?
Well,
yeah. Exactly.
we've learned to arrest and test drunk drivers. I'm not so sure that somebody with the fine haze of Mary Jane is going to be easily recognizable.
Well, the reports I've heard, they don't go anywhere. They just stay home and just sort of enjoy themselves.
You know,
they don't get on the road.
my kids are going to laugh. When was the last time anybody ever called marijuana Mary Jane?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's turn to the city. Kasim Reed got his streetcar going. He did. He got that thing up and running. It's a modest success. It doesn't look like there's a lot of use to it. I did not fulfill my promise to ride the streetcar on my way to TCU's magnificent victory over Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. I just couldn't make it work. I couldn't find the streetcar. As I came out of the hordes and throngs of people from the Georgia Dome after the game, we just finally came to a MARTA station and said, that's it, we're not going to look for the streetcar anymore. But it's going to be a nice thing for tourists.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not sure it's going to draw the fares that everybody thinks.
I know. It'll be interesting to see if this novelty wears off. Now, the mayor says he wants to extend the streetcar and find more funding for it. I don't know if we'll see the support for that.
Well, that was the idea all along.
Right.
It was, and you remember the original streetcar idea was to go up Peachtree Street, right?
All the way out to Buckhead.
Exactly.
Which is a better idea.
Well, which is an idea that you get to, you evolve toward, and I think that's what this first leg is all about.
In addition to locals get a chance to try it out. It's being free for the next 2 months, and then thereafter it'll be $1 to ride. So you get a chance to come down and check it out.
And that might that has the potential to solve the homeless problem.
Excuse me, how?
Just when it's cold, let's just put the homeless on the streetcar and let them go around. The urban campers, let them just go round and round. It's $1. It's a heck of a bargain, right? Especially in these first few weeks of
Well, it's
free
free
riding.
for now, right?
Yeah, all right. Now, I hear that the Atlanta City Council is to consider this coming week, a measure to put Kasim Reed's infrastructure bonds on the ballot. I think for a March referendum, $250 million to do the basic revamping of bridges and paving and sidewalks and all that sort of thing that the new cities just do out of their budgets. But it looks like council will pass that referendum. But I'm surprised. I haven't heard the mayor really promoting it. Have you, Alexis?
I haven't heard a lot of talk about it, and I take that back. He has talked about it quite a bit, that this is something that we need to do, but in terms of the timing, I haven't
Well,
heard.
he's been vague about exactly what's in it. I don't, for example, have a clue. Jeff, do you, as to what's in the $250 million?
Yeah, I mean, there is a very detailed
Is there?
plan and a very detailed strategy toward getting there. Not only that, but there is an intricate plan for paying for it as well. You know, when we look at the sale of the Civic Center, for instance, the sale of Underground, all of these things are related to
Turner Field.
the ability, well, yes, all of these things are related to the ability to be able to service those bonds.
And I don't see much opposition to that. I think when you have specificity, as you're pointing out,
Yeah.
people feel more comfortable.
Absolutely, and I think that you're going to see a lot of specificity both on the project side and on the financing.
You also, Phil, have a similar situation in Cobb County, where the chairman, Tim Lee, is talking about a homestead option sales tax, and he wants to revisit the proposal for bus rapid transit. I would think he would, given the Braves moving there in 2017.
Well, that's right. And of course, Tim Lee, the commission chairman, isn't the most popular guy. He is not known as Mr. Transparency, as we all have found out, especially with the Braves move. However, you're right. They are just, we said this last week on the broadcast, they're just playing this day by day when it comes to parking, when it comes to getting people to the new stadium. And I'm not so sure, though, that Cobb Countyans want to pay more out of their taxes. They're going to have to see specificity on this whole proposal.
You're right, but it's interesting. Taxes are in the air, aren't they? All right, when we come back, we're going to say farewell to Saxby Chambliss as he leaves the U.S. Senate. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
The congressional career of Saxby Chambliss has come to an end after 20 years in Washington, several years in Congress, elected in 1994, and then elected to the U.S. Senate, where he served 3 terms. And he's going to become a consultant on intelligence issues. But I think Saxby Chambliss deserves credit for walking a fine line in Washington. First of all, he became a leading Republican voice on intelligence and terrorism, serving on the Intelligence Committee. And he also managed to become chairman of the Agriculture Committee, which is really important to Georgians, but he had to walk a fine line with people who wanted subsidies and farmers in South Georgia and so forth, peanut farmers.
Immigration.
And people who didn't want it. And then Phil, he tried, I think one of his major failures, which he's casting as a success, was the Gang of Six, or was it the Gang of Eight, a bipartisan effort to cut the budget?
That's right. It was the Gang of Six, and he was working with the Democrat Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. And you know, I think even conservatives have to cut a little slack there. You can hold to your principles, but you still have to govern. And they tried to find a formula that was unfortunately rejected by President Obama, who named the commission to help find a formula to try to cut taxes and to try to streamline government a bit. And it was bipartisan. Was it perfect? No. But
it wasn't perfect, but I mean, the criticism of Saxby Chambliss didn't come from the left, it came from the right, because he was trying to cooperate with
came from both sides.
because he was trying to cooperate with Democrats and come to some solutions.
It came from the White House, too, Jeff. You're forgetting that.
It came from Grover Norquist.
It came from Barack Obama.
Anyway, Alexis, I think Saxby Chambliss deserves a lot of credit. I think both Georgia senators do. If you look at the record, there's been no major controversy about Saxby Chambliss. He's retained the manner of the man from Moultrie, Georgia, which he is. He's gracious. You never heard Saxby Chambliss ripping into the Democrats or ripping into the Democratic president.
Except when he first ran for the U.S. Senate, right? When he ran against Max Cleland.
Yeah, when he stated the truth about Cleland.
Well,
you know, we also should.
Many people were offended and thought that he crossed the line.
We also should take a minute to salute those that are leaving Congress. You've, of course, got Senator Chambliss, but you've got Congressman Jack Kingston. You've got Congressman Barrow from over in Augusta. You've got Congressman Brown and Congressman Gingrey. All it gave. They're all for public service.
Yes.
Yeah,
some
and
were
I think at
glad
least
that
one
she-
of them is going to be back in some form or fashion,
Right.
and that's Jack Kingston.
I don't think his political career is over.
He's run statewide now. He's got his name out there. If he'll just dump the station wagon.
But I would just add, I think that David Perdue is going to follow in the footsteps of Saxby Chambliss and Johnny Isaacson and be that kind of bipartisan, willing to look at.
Okay, I want to change the subject.
Okay.
We're being so nice here. I want to talk a little football, and I want to get mad. It was probably time for Mike Smith to go as coach of the Atlanta Falcons, but the way that was handled is an outrage. Arthur Blank, distinguished businessman that he is, obviously bright, hires a search firm, and word gets out before the Falcons play their final game. The players and the coaches know in the locker room that a search firm has been retained to replace Mike Smith.
The announcers know during the game
Right.
Yeah.
and report as much.
And that had to
there's
have
a
been
search
approved.
firm.
That had to have been approved by the owner, Arthur Blank. I
Arthur
thought that
Blank
was
knows
really-
better than that.
And why didn't he get rid of the general manager, Thomas Dimitrov?
That
I
still
don't
may
understand
come.
that.
That still
But
may come.
that whole thing reminded me back in the days when the Rankin Smith family owned the Falcons, and Sports Illustrated dubbed them the Clampets because of the way they bungled everything with the Falcons. Arthur Blank has brought a real discipline to that franchise. I know he's frustrated, but what he did to Mike Smith was terrible. Now, UGA, they won their bowl game, took the loss of Mike Bobo, moved right on, and soundly defeated Louisville and the former evil genius, Bobby Petrino. But here's the big praise. How about Georgia Tech? If they're not in the top 10, I'm just dead wrong.
Yep.
They defeated Mississippi State in the Orange Bowl handily. Coach Paul Johnson got another 11-win
11
season.
wins, yeah.
They really deserve a ton of credit, and so there's my football rant. Now, one last thing. This is a real change in Atlanta. AirTran Airways made its last flight last week. Little crowd came out to see him fly that last flight to Tampa. AirTran, we all owe AirTran because they held Delta in check on the fare front.
Yes.
And Southwest is doing a different thing now that they've purchased AirTran, right?
Right, that's correct.
It's not the same deal. It's not the same competitive balance. Fewer flights, among other things. But even before we lament AirTran, remember ValueJet? That was the company that preceded it.
Right.
And those folks had a good idea, and for the last, 25 years, ValueJet AirTran has worked.
Maybe when Paulding County gets its airport going in a couple of years, that'll hold Delta's feet to the fire, too.
Don't hold your
That
breath.
remains to be seen.
Now,
right.
Delta's not in the airline business. They're in the public policy business. They're into gay marriage. They're into taxes. They don't
they're-
care about serving the air
Because they
passenger.
have human capital.
I think
is
their
their
politics is
priority.
gonna
How
hurt
about
Delta.
that? They like people.
Yeah,
They like those tax breaks for their fuel, too, that they don't deserve.
that's right. No, they're in the politics business. They're no longer in the business of serving passengers. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for this week's winners and losers.
Fox 5 meteorologist Joanne Feldman passed through with a group of school children from Alpharetta, and she explained to the children, as we prepared to tape, that we all actually like each other, and that while we may appear to be in bitter disputes, we're not. And this program has been very mild, except for my little rant on Delta Airlines, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right, now winners and losers, and Jeff, I'll start with you.
Well, thank you. I'd like to make Richard Anderson the CEO of Delta Airlines my winner, just because you beat up on him so terribly. He does employ an awful lot of Atlantans and contribute
Exactly
to
right.
the local economy a little bit. The other winner is going to be Mayor Reed because obviously the streetcar and all the progress that we're making and that infrastructure improvement that's coming, that infrastructure referendum, I should say, that's coming in March.
All right, and Phil, what do you have?
Well, I got a bunch of losers. I've been watching football like all of us, and let me go down the list. Remember that the Mayhem guy in those advertisings? Boy, what a loser. And then Larry, the Dr. Pepper guy, remember him? He's another loser. Atlanta Falcons.
No, wait. You left out the worst one.
Which one?
Rob Lowe. Those commercials are disgusting, and they make me turn the channel
All right,
immediately.
we'll make him another
So
loser,
you got three
too.
losers
I
there
got,
on that.
You don't like the
thank
Larry
you.
one?
And I got one winner. Got one winner, Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Keep an eye on this one. He wants to have a march presidential preference primary and join with other states. It could be called the SEC
I love that
primary
nickname. I
because
love that.
it's all the states where the SEC colleges compete. So let's see if he can put that together, and it'll give the South and these states more clout.
Okay.
All right, Alexis, what do you have?
I'm going to salute the High Museum and tell everybody to go down and see the Gordon Parks photography exhibit, which is in color, and it's one of the few color exhibits of civil rights activity.
And the photographs are from my home state of Kansas, in a
There
little
you-
town called Fort Scott.
How about that? I didn't
Named
know.
after you, I guess.
Probably not. But in any case, I want to salute them. And again, the streetcar is rolling, and that's another sign of progress for the city. And bringing downtown back again. I mean, it's just so much going on downtown now. It's really exciting.
Well, and I will echo what you said. The Texas fans in here from TCU for the Peach Bowl, they loved the downtown. They had a great time. And
Football Hall of Fame, Center for Civil and Human
exactly,
Rights.
all those
the
things. And you know,
aquarium,
we didn't used to have a
roller
lot of
coaster.
restaurants downtown.
That's right. we
Now
do
there are
now.
a whole lot more choices, and it's walkable, and it's good. And so I will make as my loser of the week the Falcon team. That performance against Carolina was one of the most embarrassing in history. And I will make as my winner Georgia and Georgia Tech. They both came through in the bowl season, probably both in the top 10. A lot of fun. Look forward to next football season. Oh, there's a little matter of a national championship coming up in a week, but we're not involved. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing on today's program.